We're talking a lot this week about reverse T3 and pooling of T3. So all of these little topics that we break down for you are so important. And just to avoid overwhelm, I like to break these down into tiny little videos for you to digest. But I still recommend you go back and watch this week's Facebook Live, where we do a deep dive into pooling and into reverse T3, what that means for you, how you can look for it, and what the symptoms are. Now, I'm going to encourage you, and I will post a link in the comments section of this video. I'm going to encourage you to download my free guide, the Lab and Symptom Checklist, because what that will give you is an actual printable checklist for you to know exactly the labs that you need to get. So these are the labs that you need to ask your doctor to run on you so that you can get the full picture of what your thyroid is doing. You can get that accurate picture of your thyroid health at the moment. One of those tests is reverse T3. So in that free guide, I also give you the optimal functional lab values. These are where in functional medicine, we have found patients to feel their best, to be optimized, to experience an alleviation of hypothyroid symptoms. So you can grab your labs that you've already had done and you can compare them to the optimal lab values. Also in there, there's a lot of symptoms that I often get questions about. Symptoms like muscle pain, joint pain, things that you would increased allergies, things you wouldn't really immediately connect with having hypothyroidism, but that are very much connected to having untreated, mistreated, not optimized thyroid, hypothyroidism, or Hashimoto's. So please download that free guide. I will put the link in the comments section. You can also go to my website at amiehornaman.com and you can click on free guides. There are 2 of them there. The other one that you might be interested in is the 3 things you can do right now to lose body fat. And in that guide, we definitely talk thyroid and we talk optimal lab values. Okay, so moving on to reverse T3, which is one of those labs that you absolutely must get. Now, optimal lab values of reverse T3 are less than 15. Some people say less than 12. I will accept less than 15 if that free T3 is optimal. Now, in order to understand reverse T3, you guys know me, you know I love to give scenarios and stories and analogies. So this is how I want you to think of it. Your cell only has receptor sites on it for T3. It does not have receptor sites for T4. That's why I think T4 monotherapy is ridiculous, because it has to convert. And many, many things can get in the way of that conversion. So if your cell can only pick up T3, think of it as the Uber coming to pick you up for work, and it can only pick up something that looks like T3. Okay, now reverse T3 happens when T4 does not convert properly. It converts instead to reverse T3. It's an imposter. It's a competitor. It competes for that spot on the cell. It competes for that Uber ride to work. So here's what it's going to do. It's going to put on a hat. It's going to pretend like it's T3. So here comes the Uber ready to pick me up. I'm reverse T3. I'm not really T3, but I look like it. So the Uber driver comes up and picks me up, and I get in the car and I take the place of the T3 molecule. Now T3 doesn't have a ride to work. He's just sitting home. I go to work and I get into the office, into the cell, and I do nothing because I don't have the ability to turn on genes to increase metabolism, to stimulate your hair follicles, to grow hair, to improve your mood or your energy. I can't do it. I don't have that ability. But I'm taking your place at work. I took your place on that Uber ride, and I'm just going to sit around the office and do absolutely nothing all day. We all have experienced coworkers like this. The guy or the gal that sits there and does nothing but still gets paid. They're taking the place of a worker that could come in and really get the job done, like T3 does. But they just sit there and take up space and take up air instead. That is reverse T3. Think of it that way. Reverse T3 is an imposter. You don't want too many of them around. That's why we like 15 or below. If you have enough free T3 in your system, then there's enough for the cells to pick up. We want that reverse T3 as low as possible so it does not get picked up by the cell. It does not get picked up by the Uber driver that thinks that it's T3. It does not get into the workplace and sit there and do nothing. We only want the active thyroid hormone in there. We only want free T3 in there. So we want reverse T3 as low as possible. Now I'm going to do a quick screen share with you. I want you to see this. Okay, bear with me. This is, where's it at? Is it this one? Here we go. This is by Dr. Weston Child. So here's all the things that can increase levels of reverse T3. Calorie restricted dieting. Now we went over this in the Facebook Live, but I want to go over it again in this video so that you have it all in one place and you can watch it and listen to it quickly and absorb all this information. So calorie restricted dieting, those HCG diets. And as soon as he said this, I listened to a video of his. I love listening to him. He's really knowledgeable in the thyroid. As soon as he said calorie restricted dieting, I immediately thought of the HCG diet. I hate it when I have patients that come in that have been on this because they have seriously damaged their metabolism. And it can take a while to bring that back. It can take up to 6 months after going on a very low calorie diet or HCG diet to bring back those levels of free T3 and reduce reverse T3. Chronic illness and infections. Now, sometimes, you know, we talk about EBV, the Epstein-Barr virus. That definitely can raise reverse T3, but any kind of infection, even, you know, SIBO, bacterial overgrowth, if you end up in the hospital, that's going to increase reverse T3. And then also the comorbidities to having hypothyroidism. I always say that insulin resistance goes hand in hand. Leptin resistance goes hand in hand. We often see these issues with hypothyroidism. So having that can increase reverse T3 on its own. Chronic inflammation. So anything, any cause of inflammation can result in decreased T4 to T3 conversion, which increases reverse T3. So untreated autoimmune disease, if you guys are still eating gluten and you're flaring up your autoimmune attack, that's not good. And again, we come back to leptin resistance, insulin resistance, dysbiosis, and of course the big ones such as cancer, uncontrolled lupus, MS, and so on. All of that can cause systemic inflammation in the body and increase reverse T3. Chronic untreated gut infections, imbalances. So this is where we get into the SIBO. I have so many people with yeast overgrowth and candida, IBD, IBS, reflux, and GERD. GERD being treated with PPIs, Protonics, all those ones that are over the counter, the Zantac, the Tums, all of that degrades the gut lining and can hinder T4 to T3 conversion. Emotional and psychological stressors, it really does play a role. So, you know, these are things that sometimes we just can't avoid, but we have to be aware that the death of a loved one, divorce, a move, trauma, PTSD, an accident, a TBI, all of these things can just be present and can be interfering. Sometimes it takes some help. Sometimes it takes some psychological counseling to actually lower the stress response of the body. Things like yoga, hot yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, all of those tap into the parasympathetic nervous system and help to lower cortisol and lower the stress response. And then the emotional and psychological stressors, we could even take that one step further and say that that's going to impact cortisol, and then cortisol impacts reverse T3 as well. Certain medications. So the big ones, blood pressure medication, diabetic medication other than metformin. Metformin is relatively innocuous. It doesn't really do much in terms of getting in the way. It doesn't have many side effects. But the other big diabetic medications, especially insulin, so those who are insulin-dependent diabetics, that can elevate reverse T3. Anti-seizure medication, so a lot of you are on Topamax for weight loss. That can be working against you if you have hypothyroidism and you have a problem converting T4 to T3, or you have high reverse T3. Narcotics and antidepressants. So crazy enough, hey, all of us have been handed an antidepressant by our doctor when we were first diagnosed with hypothyroidism. Many, many, many of you have. And unfortunately, this can actually make the hypothyroidism worse because it's going to elevate reverse T3. Beta blockers, which are used to treat hyperthyroidism and blood pressure. And I've even seen some people post in the forums, one answer in particular, where a woman indicated that she was having higher than normal heart rate based on her Apple Watch. And the person said, go on metoprolol. That's the last thing you want to do if you don't actually have an arrhythmia, an actual heart issue that requires metoprolol, because that could come in and make your hypothyroidism worse, and her high heart rate, her heart palpitations could actually be caused by untreated, undertreated, mistreated hypothyroidism. So we don't want to be throwing medications on that could actually do more harm than good.